go into the Burnley game, we do have some big news, you know. Change for Tottenham. They're doing their second or third or fourth. I don't know, not too many. Sure how many, but they're doing their protest before the game. I know some people are supporting it, some aren't. But I saw you had some strong feelings about it, Sean, about the protest and, you know, about how they may or may not be taking credit for Donna Cullen's resignation. Just give us your brief thoughts and brief words on the protests, because I know there's some people here that are big supporters of it, but there's some that also are a bit confused by what they're doing.
Yeah, first of all, I always support the right to protest, right? I'm always aboard it. I've always, whether it was Levy out protest before Change for Tottenham came along, every single time there's a protest, you know, I don't subscribe to this Levy out thing. I don't. Yeah. I'm happy. I think Daniel Levy's a good chairman. I can't think of like more than, there's only maybe 4 or 5 chairmen in the Premier League that I'd rather have than him. So I'm not on board it, right? But I support the right to protest. And for what it's worth, I've always been to every protest. I think I'm one of like 50 or 60 people that have been to every protest that Change for Tottenham have done. And I'll be there tomorrow as well. And so like, there's no like, I don't say they shouldn't do it or that it's a disgrace or I have a problem with it. Why I struggle to kind of like square the circle with is the fact that they seem to take credit for everything that happens. And the logic doesn't logic for me. Like that's all I ever look for when I'm having a conversation with someone is I don't care where you land, just show me you're working out. And if I can understand the thought process and it makes sense, then I'm like, okay, fair enough. I disagree or I agree, but I can understand where you feel or how you feel or why you feel what you feel. With regards this one, I just feel like every time Change for Tottenham say something, they're taking credit for things that have nothing to do with themselves and saying things like, you know, when Donna Cullen exited the club in June, they gave themselves a pat on the back like it was something down to them. It wasn't. Like she was due to leave a year earlier and she was always going to leave in June. So like what you're doing, you lose credibility if you think that everything you're doing, it's almost narcissism, mate. It's all about me. It's all about us. And I find it laughable. And then, you know, I could give you 15 other examples of it, but then this latest one, you know, so Billy T's one of the visual kind of visible guys, and I like the guy. I've met him. He's a lovely guy. He's very well spoken. He's calm. He's sophisticated. He's a logical guy. I like him generally, and I don't know if he's in charge of the Twitter handle. I heard him on Last Word on Spurs last night or the night before, so, being asked what was the point of the protest, and I was interested to hear the answer.
To be fair, that's what I was. I actually, because people have asked me, you know, I've spoken about the protest, but I said I don't know what the actual message is with this protest. I don't, and I'm interested to know. So
yeah, so he said, because I was like, well, what are you moaning about now, right? Is it still the lack of trophies? Because if so, you got a trophy. Literally, the penultimate game that we played that was competitive. Obviously, Brighton was the last game we played that was competitive, and we that was a shit show, but the game before that we lifted a trophy, and then we played a game the other night and we were this close to winning a trophy. So if you're protesting lack of trophies, then it doesn't really make any sense. If you're protesting against the transfer window hasn't even closed yet. I was like, so like what's the logic? And then he said, well, the sort of logic is that if we wait until after the window closes, then it will be too late for our impact to have any measure until January. I was like, okay, so therefore you think that a protest is going to play some impact on the decision making of the football club. Okay, if we're working with that, then what happens? So if we don't sign Eze and Savinho today, but we sign them on Sunday, are you going to sit there and take credit for the signings because the protests happened just before the signings happened, right? Which I think is ludicrous in its essence. And then just a minute ago, they put out a thing. They put out a Twitter thing saying, you know, the window's a disgrace. There's no ambition, and we noted that, you know, there is obviously links that have emerged since we put out our notice that we're going to protest on Monday. So they literally are taking credit for not only Donna Cullen leaving, but they're taking credit for the links that have emerged with regards to Savinho and Eze since Monday, even though Eze was linked previously. And if you think that Savinho is, I'm just like, it's laughable. But if that's the logic that we're going with, if that's your logic, then if you protest on Saturday and we don't end up signing Eze or Savinho,
it look even worse. Yeah.
Well, but by their own logic, then they should acknowledge that if they think that their protests are responsible for the signings, then if the signings don't happen, then they should acknowledge that their protests are irrelevant. Right? That's the logic. That's their logic. It's not my logic. I think the whole
Yeah,
thing.
you're using their logic against
The
them.
club doesn't give a flying F about their protest personally, but like if that's the logic and we don't sign any players, if they're going to take credit for when it does happen, then if it doesn't happen, they should realize that their protests are irrelevant. But like they won't do that. But it's just, for me, it's cherry picking. It's like people that are significantly leaving out. Like, I think personally that they have walked themselves into a corner whereby they care so much about Tottenham that they're willing to set up a channel and talk about it all day long. But generally, deep down, I think a lot of those people have they've got themselves into a situation where things that are good news for Tottenham Hotspur are bad news for their movement. And so they somehow work against it. They don't want it to happen. They don't want Tottenham to win a trophy because it means they have to give credit to Levy. They don't want Tottenham to sign a monster because it means that the protests, because in life, your ego, if you've attached your ego to an opinion and your opinion is attached to a movement, then if the movement looks good and does well, then it has to mean that bad things are happening to the club that you support.
Yeah.
I think it's a fucked up place. Excuse my French. I think it's a terrible place to be, right? I think it's a horrible place to be. But that's the way that the world works, Jords. You know, people are attached to these opinions, and they shouldn't attach themselves to opinions where what they really want is bad things to happen to the football club so that their opinion can look correct.
No, I don't doubt. I think that there is a point in, like you say, the narcissism of potentially of putting out the message that since you've said that there may be a protest, or that I saw the tweet on Monday that there was going to be an announcement about a protest date, and then we since go in for Savinho the next day. It's all like, oh, because the news come out with Savinho, it's like we acted on the protest. It's like, come on, because I've gone online and said things. I could come and say that Tottenham have been watching my shows because I asked for Savio 3 months ago. We could always just start doing this type of thing, and it just sets a bad precedent amongst fans to think that we know as fans we have power and they do listen to our voice to an extent. But like I say, it is to an extent. They're not going to listen to us when it comes to transfers. They don't want fans' opinions on which player is good, which isn't. Like when we've seen with protests against a player signing, for example, Arsenal, Noni Madueke, the team doesn't care about the fans not liking Madueke. You don't have to choose whether you like Madueke or not once he plays on the pitch. It's the manager wanted him, so they're going to get him because the manager wants him. It's not anything to do with the fans.
Are we that caught up in our own lives that we actually think that Daniel Levy or anybody at Tottenham Hotspur, like, they might employ someone on like minimum wage who is tasked with like, I'll summarize what the general take on the fan base is via YouTube and Twitter and all that stuff. But do you really think that Daniel Levy has like an hourly meeting every day saying, what's Spurs talk show, Spurs 5, what's what's Durag Diaries? What's the kind of vibe right now? Like, am I popular? Like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
Like, what are we doing here? They don't give an F about us. They don't. But I'm not saying that in a bad way or a good way. I'm just saying that like, we're here to voice our opinions primarily, Jords, right? My opinion, your opinion.
Yeah.
And then the people in the comment sections, and shout out to you all, by the way, you want to chime in on what we're saying and have your own say. And that's the beautiful thing about social media. But to sit there and think that a football club should listen or work to the whims of people who are entirely volatile with their emotions because they're not directly responsible for the outcomes of what happens. It's madness. It's madness.
It is madness. And to be fair, like you said, I'm all for the protest. Like, I'm all for it. I'm all for people having a voice, and I support the fact that we are protesting because ultimately people want better for our club, and we all do. We all want better for our club. Like I say, I'm one person that I've always gone out there and said I don't ever tell anybody how to support their club. Everybody has their own way of supporting the club, and ultimately we should all support it in our own ways. But at the same time, there is a point of when we have to make sure the message that we're putting out, especially when you're doing these protests, is one message, and it's a message that's collative from the fans. And I think sometimes with the protest, that has been the problem is some people have got the Levy out message, and some people are going with that agenda. Some people are going with, oh, I want a better Tottenham, so I don't care whether it's Levy out, just change for Tottenham in that sense. And it's just combining those messages and making sure they all come to one with the right message. And that's where the problem has been with the protest so far for me.
Problem is, though, is that if you listen to the visible faces behind Change for Tottenham, if you go and look at their actual specific narratives, they are Levy out. They might represent anything you want in Change. Change can be anything to you, but the people that are in charge that at least you can have access to, if you go and look at their particular Twitter handles and their particular messages, the people that you know that are actually at the forefront of it, it's lipstick on a pig. They saw that Levy out, the previous incarnation, the previous iteration of Levy out movements, the people that stood the other side of the club shop every week, there's 40 of them. Those people, you know, they would say, if you're not with us, you're against us. You know, they weren't working in the middle ground. So these people are a little bit smarter in as much as saying we're open to everybody, but the actual driving force behind it is the same thing. It's Levy out, Levy out, Levy out.
Same message. Still the same message. But hopefully it goes well in it. I hope anybody that's attending the protest, it goes well. You guys enjoy the day. It is going to be our first game of the season, and hopefully it's going to be warm outside as well. So it is going to be a pleasant day to enjoy away from that and onwards from that. And talking about the game, obviously, it's quite of a pleasant